There are two kinds of people in Ukraine. There's one side which sympathizes with Moscow, yes there is, and wants Ukraine to make a unilateral compromise. There's another side which wants Ukraine to hold its red lines and make Russia agree to its terms. This is a much bigger number. This afternoon, I interviewed two individuals who represent these opposite sides. Olga Tokariuk, an independent journalist based in Kiev, and Andrii Telizhenko. He's a political consultant and a former diplomat. Here's what they told me. Andrii, my first question is to you. There's a lot of talk about diplomacy delivering. It's been a hectic week of meetings, but the EU Foreign Policy Chief, Mr. Borrell, has said that while Emmanuel Macron has not achieved a miracle, there is a sense of détente. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, there is a possibility of a breakthrough if that agreement which President Macron reached in Moscow and here in Kiev will be reached tomorrow during the Normandy talks in Berlin with experts and the advisors with the Normandy format. So basically, we will see tomorrow if there will be a breakthrough or there will be other negotiations happening which Ukraine will not basically accept the deal which Macron was presented to Kiev here after visiting Moscow. So this is the main thing we have to look for tomorrow, negotiations. And if they won't have a breakthrough, we'll see Mr. Scholz visit, Chancellor Scholz visit to Kiev. They may have something new to bring to the table, which will be the last resort of diplomacy here in this area of nonsense which is happening here in Kiev.
The Russians have sort of poured cold water over what President Macron said and said that there is no de-escalation happening at this point. Do you expect a breakthrough?
Not really. Unfortunately, Russia has shown on numerous occasions that it is not willing to implement its provisions that it should implement under the Minsk agreements, and these are provisions that are related to the security part. And I mean here ceasefire, an effective ceasefire, not just the ceasefire on paper, also withdrawal of its troop and military equipment and the return of the border to under Ukrainian control. Russia has also been unwilling to let the OSCE mission in Donbass full access to do their monitoring mission. So unfortunately, it is Russia that is not delivering on the Minsk agreements, but instead it insists and it tries to put pressure also on France and Germany, who are part of the Normandy format, to put pressure on Ukraine so that Ukraine implements the political part, the elections and the special status for Donbass first before the security part is implemented by Russia. So I really don't believe there could be a breakthrough until the Kremlin changes its position on this.
And the Kremlin has shown no signs of changing its position. We also know that the current Ukrainian president is not a huge fan of the Minsk Accords. Given this situation, do you expect a breakthrough, and do you think that the Western allies of Ukraine are essentially building pressure, as Olga said, on Kiev to offer unilateral concessions?
Basically today, Zelensky is saying that he doesn't support the Minsk agreements, which he signed during the Paris meeting of Normandy format in 2019, the Paris communique. He basically signed his signature on during those agreements, and it had the formula Steinmeier also implemented in that communique. So we have to basically implement what we signed. That's our way of uniting Ukraine, and we had a chance to do it within the last couple of years, to change the format, to add additional steps to it, to basically win the minds of people in Donbass and Lugansk peaceful way, which we didn't do anything within the last 8 years. Now we have a peace deal on the table, and we have to take it because it will unite Ukraine. Today, the negotiations are talking about not only the main steps of stopping the shooting, and also they're talking about sending electricity from Ukraine to Lugansk and Donetsk. Also stopping the sniper rifle shootings, which are causing the most deaths in that region.
Andrii, it's a failed ceasefire agreement. You're calling it a peace deal.
It's a failed ceasefire agreement, which after provocations from both sides were happening. We have to understand the shootings which are happening right now, the main deaths are happening from the sniper shootings on both sides of the table. And we have a problem of the remining of the area, which has to be done within that's also a step which they're going to talk about tomorrow in Berlin. If Ukraine will go forward with these steps of stopping the shootings of sniper rifles, stopping the mining agreement, and then we have the starting of electricity sending to eastern Ukraine, we have to take those steps to unite Ukraine and talk with the OSCE and talk with our people in eastern Ukraine to have a peace here. Because if we will continue to negotiate for another 30 years, we're going to lose more and more citizens here, and Ukraine will be a failed state, because while we have war, while we have a conflict, no progress can be done in a country. That's the main issue. We have to stop the fighting, we have to make peace and have a consensus. That's diplomacy.
That's diplomacy. Olga, we know what Russia wants, and now we see that Ukraine's partners in the West, in Europe and NATO, are also sort of saying that go back to the Minsk agreement. As he says, it's a peace deal. What options does Ukraine have? Does it have the luxury to take a tougher line and say, we are not going to make these unilateral concessions?
Yeah, well, I just first want to comment on what my interlocutor just said. I think the audience has to know that this person has been sanctioned by the United States and also by Ukraine for his connections to Andrii Telizhenko, who is believed to be Russian, have links to Russian intelligence officers. You know, so we should really question whether he represents here the point of view of Ukraine.
It is his point of view. I just want your comments on the question I asked.
It's just that I think your audience has to know that. Sure. Okay, and on the question you asked, I think one of the problems with the Minsk agreements, and again an illustration why Russia is unwilling to implement its part of it, is the fact that Russia has been handing over Russian passports on the occupied Donbass on a massive scale. So basically now between 600,000 and 1 million people in the occupied territories of Ukraine are Russian citizens. And you know, this is a very clear illustration that Russia doesn't really want, to pursue peace agreements. And for Ukraine, it's also a tricky question, because if Ukraine goes forward, with implementing the political part, these are now Russian citizens. And the fact also, that's absolutely not true that Ukraine was violating the ceasefire. It was Ukraine that unilaterally declared ceasefire.
That's all fine, but what options does Kiev have at this point when everyone is telling them to go back to the Minsk Accords?
Well, Kyiv has to hold to its red lines, and the red lines are that there can be no compromises on the Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity, that the security provisions of the Minsk agreements need to be implemented first, and that the West actually should use the leverage it has over Russia to push Russia to make first steps towards a diplomatic solution.
Your comments?
Yeah, I'll get back to what I've been sanctioned for. I've been sanctioned by the U.S. government for supporting Trump. I was a witness in the Senate Investigation Committee of Homeland Security and Finance within the United States, and was said to be not any Russian spy or connected to Derkach. And even though after Trump lost, basically the last week I got sanctioned. So, and our government, because it doesn't have any sovereignty, it sanctioned me, which I'm suing right now in the Supreme Court of Ukraine, the President of Ukraine, and the court did take my case into consideration, and it is in process. So any political allegations against me, I was a diplomat, I was a government official in the Ukrainian government, I'm a patriot of my country, and I want peace for my country. And that's the main thing. I want stop the bloodshed, first of all. And you talk to a lot of diplomats here who are not working with the government, who are able to talk, they won't be afraid to say that they want peace also. That is the main thing here, to unite our country and to have peace and stop the bloodshed.
Indeed. Interesting times, but thanks very much, both of you, for sharing your thoughts. Yes. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.